Hello, salam, shalom, namaste, aloha, sat sri akal, hola, ciao, and bonjour. I hope you're doing fabulously. I know I am, and I'm super excited today because I have my friend Neil Rosen with me, and he is a life coach. He's also a substitute teacher, semi-retired school counselor, and swim instructor. And I'm telling you all of this because we will be learning from him and gaining a benefit from his wisdom, having done all of these different works. And I'm so excited because today we are going to be talking about how to create more self-confidence in our kids. So Neil, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Will you tell us a little bit more about who you are and the work that you love to do?
Sure. So I was an educator for over 25 years as a school counselor, a school psychologist. I'm currently a life coach. I'm starting off as a life coach, and while I'm trying to get my business off the ground, I'm also substitute teaching until I can find another school counselor position.
Cool. Yeah, so you have been working in the school system. You've been working with kids for over 30 years now, I believe.
Yes.
So you are an amazingly excellent resource for us to talk about this topic of creating more self-confidence in kids. What do you see as some of the big problems that our kids are facing that affect their self-confidence?
Well, I think the schools are putting too much emphasis now on testing.
Mm,
A lot of parents, I don't even think are aware why school now starts in like the second week of August rather than after Labor Day.
mm,
And it's because of this emphasis on testing. It's test, test, test. And, that's how schools are measured, or school districts are measured if they're successful or not. So there's a big emphasis on testing rather than, I think, the social emotional well-being of our students,
yeah.
and also teaching students life skills that they can apply to their life now and when they turn our age.
Mm, yes. Yeah, I definitely see how a lack of education in the context of life skills is a huge issue in our education system, and not just here in America, but globally. I actually never went to school here in America. I was like practically 18 when I immigrated here, so I went straight to college. But I did go to school in India, in Pakistan, and even in the Middle East for a few years before we immigrated to America. And in none of those countries did we receive any significant life skills education or just, life wisdom education. I mean, there was a little bit that we learned in the context of, like, in Pakistan, they force you to go through religious studies classes, or rather I should say Islamic studies classes. And so they try to, teach you some basics of the religion of Islam.
Is that
But
mandatory?
in Pakistan, it is pretty much mandatory. Um, but the honestly, my experience of going through those classes is that it did very little good for me. Like, I got some basic knowledge, and I learned some basic rituals and things. But what I found was really missing and why it wasn't really helpful for me ultimately is because I didn't truly understand what I was learning and why I was learning it. A lot of the emphasis was on just rote memorization and just being able to reproduce accurately what my teachers told me on my exams and so forth.
Well, I
And
think that's traditional teaching here
uh,
too in the United States. It's just rote. And
right.
our college system is set up that way that, you have a lecturer up there and
Mm,
the professor talks for, an hour to 3 hours, depending on how long the course is. And you're taking notes and then you're getting tested on it or you have some type of project to do. There's no interaction between
ah,
the professor and the students. That's starting to change now,
mm,
but traditionally, that's how our system was.
oh
And
my,
I'm surprised. I mean, I never learned how to do a checkbook in school. My father taught me.
mm,
And I don't know about the countries that you were educated in. Did they teach you even how to balance a checkbook?
no, certainly not me, a girl. I never learned that even after I was out of school in those countries. Like I graduated my high school in Pakistan, and I didn't know how to balance a checkbook. I didn't even have a bank account. I didn't, I, I, my gosh, no, I had practically no practical life skills in terms of if I had to go live on my own, I wouldn't have survived.
And also like filling out a job application.
Oh no, not at all.
In high school, I just applied for a job. I had no training in school on how to do that. Now they do it. I think they do it out of the language arts class in high school, but it's not a class. I mean, I think all these life skills should be a class. It should be an elective
Yes.
class rather than trying to do it out of your language arts class or, taking a workshop. A lot of times the school counselors have workshops on how to fill out a job application, how to put your resume together, doing mock interviews,
Yeah.
um, filling out financial aid statements,
Yes. Those
you
are
know,
really helpful things, but because they're not required, they're not part of the core curriculum, most of the students don't end up actually taking advantage of it. At least that's how it was for me in college. Like where I started out my college career in the US in Santa Monica College, which is a community college for those people who are not familiar with it. And
it's
then I
also one of
transferred.
the better community
Oh,
colleges in
I love
California.
it. I love Santa Monica College. I absolutely love it. It changed my life for the better. I wouldn't be sitting here with you talking so comfortably and confidently if I had not had the experiences and the learning that I had in Santa Monica College. I mean, that's where I really began to come into my own and develop my sense of my own individual self and my began to recognize myself as a leader. I began to see dreams of having an actual career and how I could make an impact in the world. All of that for me really started when I was in Santa Monica College. They have a lot of awesome resources on campus. They have a lot of very cool classes. I actually took a class there in financial literacy, and that's how I learned about credit cards and how to buy a car and like all
But
those
they
types of
but they should be teaching these skills in high school
I
because
know.
some of our students still go on beyond high school for further education. They don't go to the community college. They don't go to the state college or
Yeah.
UC or
Yeah.
private college. They go to the workforce.
Yeah.
And another thing that just blows my mind is that we don't teach students how to be parents. The only way
Yes.
you learn how to be a parent is how your parent brought you up. And if you had a parent that was abusive or neglectful, what kind of role model do you have?
True, very true. I mean, and actually, even before you can become a great parent, you have to become a great person who treats yourself with love and compassion and respect, as so many of us we struggled. I know as a teen, I really struggled with my self-esteem, with my self-confidence. And a big part of that for me was all the negative self-talk that I gave to myself. You know, I blamed myself, I judged myself, I criticized myself, and I was doing it in vicious, vicious ways. Mm.
So I wanted to talk about self-confidence because people talk about it, but I don't think they understand it.
Yes.
And I was listening, to some TED Talks and some YouTube videos of some of the experts in the field, like Jack Canfield, um, who wrote the Chicken Soup series.
Mm-hmm.
And he had some really good advice, and I'd like to share that with our listeners today, if I may.
Yes, please, please tell us.
So he was talking about a lot of times we have negative memories locked in our brain.
Mm-hmm.
For example, if you get fired from a job, that's ingrained in your brain.
Right.
Okay, or if you go through an ugly divorce, or if you face some type of trauma, and if you were in New York when 9/11 hit, that's ingrained in your brain for life. I mean, last week, I think there was a series, a special on TV on 9/11, 20 years later. And the first responders that were there, the police, firemen, paramedics, and so forth, they still get triggered today. I mean, they have post-traumatic stress disorder. I mean, from smells, sounds, these things trigger off memories, traumatic memories that's ingrained in their brains for life. And so what Jack is suggesting is that we have to acknowledge our accomplishments. Too many times people aren't willing to share that. They think they're bragging or showing off.
Mm.
But it's important to acknowledge small accomplishments, small steps that you make.
Mm.
For example, in school, if you're usually getting C's on papers and you could push it up and get a B on an essay, that's a small step accomplishment. Another one would be like losing 5 pounds.
Mm.
If you can lose 5 pounds, that's quite an accomplishment. A lot of people, during New Year's resolutions, everyone makes these resolutions. And I would say 95% of the people after a month or two, they give up because they have unrealistic expectations.
Mm.
So if you could make it into small steps and chunk it,
Yeah.
I think you'll be more successful. And that's what I do when I'm a swim coach or a swim instructor during
Uh-huh.
the summer when I work with students. I break things down into simple little steps. I don't jump from A to Z. I go from A to B to C. And I don't go to D until a kid feels comfortable in A, B, and C.
Yeah. What are some of the specific steps that you teach when you're teaching swimming?
Well, the first step is, putting your face in the water. A lot of students, for whatever reason, don't like putting their face in the water. And especially, I think they get that from their moms. Moms, don't hate me out there, but a lot of times I see kids holding their nose when they go underwater.
Oh.
Or they get or they want a nose plug on their nose. And I think they get that from their moms because I don't think dads would do that.
Uh-huh.
So the first thing is learning how to blow bubbles underwater.
Mm.
And sometimes kids blow too much really hard and then it goes like up their nose and then they start
Mm.
choking and gagging. So I tell kids to think of like blowing out a candle. That's how hard you want to blow. It's a a low blow bubble step, I guess. And then once you can do that, the next step is learning how to glide. So it's just pushing off on the side, arms in front. I tell the kids to pretend like you're Aquaman or Superman and just glide, pretend like you're in the sky and you're gliding.
Uh-huh.
And then the next step would be the flutter kick, learning how to do the flutter kick. A lot of times kids tend to bend their knees. So you want to show them how to try to keep their legs straight. And you don't even have to really kick that hard. It could be underwater. It doesn't even have to be above the surface. So like those are some of the steps that, that I teach
Oh, so
swimming too.
you
But
don't,
I think you could use those same principles
yeah,
in anything that you want to learn. You got to break things into chunks. You
yeah,
can't expect someone to, for example, I'm not the most computer literate person in the world, and I think it's important for students as well as teachers and adults to know your learning styles.
mm,
So for myself, I am not an auditory learner, and my wife could vouch for that. A lot of times she doesn't think I listen or follow her directions. I'm a more visual, hands-on learner. I have to see it and I have to do it hands-on in order for me to learn how to do something new. And I
yeah,
think it's important for students to know their learning styles,
right.
because a lot of times teachers teach to their style, and
Mm,
that might not be the style that's most beneficial for the student to learn the
yeah,
new task.
that's right. And actually, I know of research that shows that unfortunately, the way our educational system's set up, it's designed mostly for the benefit of people who are auditory learners. It's like you were saying earlier, Neil, most of the traditional way of teaching is focused on the teacher lectures at you and you have to listen and take notes. And so that works really well for people who are auditory learners, but for people who are, what's that word you use? The learn
Visual
by doing. Well,
or
visual,
kinesthetic.
kinesthetic, yes. The kinesthetic learners are at the biggest disadvantage in this methodology. And actually, there are way more people who are kinesthetic learners compared to auditory learners or even visual learners. The largest chunk of the population is kinesthetic learners, and they're the least well served in our educational system. Like even visual learners have um, some thought given to their learning style and needs in the traditional context. So for example, a teacher will usually might have a PowerPoint or write some things down on a board, and that can help the visual learners. Uh, but what are we doing to help our kinesthetic learners? There's very few teachers who incorporate teaching strategies that are geared towards helping kinesthetic learners. And that's one of the reasons why so many kids in school struggle.
And drop out
Yeah,
because
yeah,
they don't have any success.
yeah.
So that's what I like in the high schools now, is that they brought back the trades, and they call it CTC. I forgot what that stands for, but it's for the students that like want to learn how to auto shop, or the kids that want to do robotics, or kids that want to learn how to do graphic design. And I'm happy they brought that back,
Yeah.
because those type of students are kinesthetic learners, and they were getting frustrated. By middle school, a lot of students were dropping out, especially in our inner cities. And
Yeah.
those students already are at a disadvantage,
Mm,
especially with this COVID. I mean, I was hearing recently during this COVID-19 pandemic, where students were out of school for 16 months and were supposed to do distance learning. A lot of the inner city kids didn't even have access to computers or
right.
Chromebooks. And if
That's
they did, they didn't have Wi-Fi for
yeah.
them so they can get the lesson that the teacher was
Yeah.
teaching.
Yeah, and it's crazy that, the kids are struggling because of lack of resources. They're struggling because the teachers are not actually doing as good a job at teaching as they could be in terms of accommodating the different learning styles the children have and so forth. Uh, but for the most part, the kids don't recognize that. They don't realize That's why they're struggling. The system doesn't acknowledge that. And so what you end up with is the kid struggles, and then it impacts their self-esteem, it impacts their self-confidence. And it's just, and how do you get them out of that? So
Right.
what
Well,
can we do?
the kids that are struggling also, they tend to act out
Mm,
because they don't understand what's going on.
right,
So
right,
they act out and then they get kicked out of the classroom and
right,
then they miss more instruction.
right. It becomes a vicious cycle.
And then it deters the other students that want to learn too, because these kids are
Mm,
distractions.
right. So what
And
can you
substitute teaching, I've noticed at least the two school districts that I'm subbing for, and they're both elementary. Well, one goes up to middle school, Anaheim Elementary School District and Buena Park School District, is that they're using the whiteboards
Mhm.
for the visual learners. They're doing like Google Docs and things, so kids can actually visually see things on the board. They could hear the instructions of the teacher. So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But something that I'm really concerned about is that these kids are on these Chromebooks and stuff, and there have been studies from psychologists for years, and I think writers can tell you this too, that using a pencil or a pen when you're writing, somehow it's ingrained in your brain. But when you're using a keyboard, that information doesn't stay ingrained in your brain.
Mm.
And so kids are missing out on that because they're, I mean, I'm shocked. And this is another skill I think kids should learn. Kids, can you believe this? And some parents, I don't even realize this. Kids are not learning how to handwrite anymore. And that was a skill when I was in school that you learn that. You learn printing and handwriting. Now, either kids don't know how to do it or their parents have to teach them
Mm.
because the schools aren't doing it.
Huh. I did not realize schools weren't teaching handwriting anymore.
No,
I'm
because
very surprised
there's
by
such a
that.
focus and demand on testing that the teachers are just pushing the skills that the kids need to learn so they can look good on the tests.
Oh,
It's all about testing. It's all about performance. It's all about looking good either as a school or as a district as a whole.
yeah, yeah,
So I wanted to go back. Jack mentioned, on accomplishments, and I thought this was really a neat idea.
yeah.
I don't think I would have ever thought of this. I remember doing like a timeline in school,
Uh-huh.
and this is kind of like the same exercise that he's suggesting, is that you break up your life into three sections. So you can go from, let's say, your elementary school years, maybe to junior high, that could be one section, and junior high to high school could be another section, and then from college to your first job, maybe that could be another section. So he's suggesting three. So maybe you could even do four, because then you could talk about middle age, and then
Mm,
you could have being a senior. That could be another section. But he talks about, and I think this is really neat, is to come up with 100 different things that you have accomplished in your life and put them in each section. So
mm,
for example, in elementary school, learning your multiplication tables, that would be under that. In middle school, it could be writing an essay or, deciding on maybe a possible career path that you want to follow, or, a science experiment that you can, the four steps of a science experiment, and I can't think of them offhand, but, where you have a hypothesis, you test it out, maybe you reevaluate and then retest again.
yes.
So that would be like a middle school thing. And then high school would be, coming up with maybe a resume or a portfolio of things that you have accomplished in high school. Maybe passing AP exams or honor roll classes,
Yes.
or, writing an essay or a persuasion paper or a speech, uh, being part of band or drill team.
Yes.
This would all be in your portfolio.
Mm.
And then in college, I know that in college, being in education, I was going for my administrative credential, and we started putting a portfolio together. So when you go for a job interview, you can share this information with the interview panel. I think that's a marvelous idea that what Jack came up with is this concept of like having a timeline and dividing your life up
Mm.
and putting down your accomplishments. And they don't have to be great things. He was talking about like, getting promoted to middle school, graduating high school, um, passing your driver's license, getting your first job.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I received two lessons from that. Number one, celebrate every accomplishment, whether it's big or small, in someone else's eyes or in society's eyes. Um, Celebrate every accomplishment. And number two, like in the context especially of developing this kind of timeline for yourself, you want to get in at least 100 of them in, because I think that is something that's really important. I know as a happiness expert, one of the things that I work on with my clients is raising their gratitude awareness, or what I call
Oh,
tapping
yeah.
into our gratitude attitude, right? And one of the things that I find is that a lot of people really struggle to find things that they can be grateful for. Like if I say, come tell me 5 things you can be grateful for right now, a lot of people can't think of 5 things. They'll think of maybe one thing, 2 things, and then they have to think a lot to come up with the third, fourth, fifth thing. And if I say, tell me 10 things right now that you can be grateful for, most people can't do it. And so I'm anticipating that when people start to create a timeline like this for themselves and they have to think of 100 accomplishments, some people might feel a little challenged by that number 100, but don't give up. Like once you
Well, even
start.
try to do 10 or 20 to start off with.
Yes, exactly. You just start the process. And then the more you think about it, the more you practice this, it's a skill, I think, the better you will get and the more things you will begin to remember that you have accomplished, and you'll be able to add that to your list over time.
Yeah, Steve Harvey talked about gratitude.
Uh-huh.
Um, I like to talk about him on another podcast he talks about success.
Uh,
And I don't know, a lot of people aren't even aware of this, that he was homeless for 3 years. He was living on the streets, and he's not a very well-educated man. I don't even know if he completed high school,
mm,
but yet he's very successful.
yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. I love the topic of gratitude, and I would love to talk about it another time. And I'm keeping my eye on the clock for you and me, Neil, and I see that we are running out of time for today. So
We're
any
still
last,
good. We're still
we're
good.
still good. We're still good. But we need to start thinking about what are some last thoughts that you would love to share right now.
Wow. Okay, because I had a lot more I wanted to try to cover, but all right, let's go to this. Let's jump to this one. I think this is really important,
Yeah.
is to visualize success. Professional athletes do this all the time. They have sports psychologists that work with them. And any type of big game or any game, these players, they visualize their success before they go on the court or they enter the field. Um, for example, like Oro Hershiser, before he even goes to the mound, he visualizes the whole game in his mind and him being successful. Certain pitches, with the scouting report, he knows certain pitches where the hitters are weak. He knows, that he's going to throw a slider to this guy, a high fastball to this guy, a a sinker ball to this guy. And he visualizes each inning and what he wants to accomplish. And that's what makes him successful. LeBron James, for the Lakers, he's probably one of the best basketball players of all time. He visualizes success before he even gets on the court as well. Like, weaknesses of the other team, what he wants to try to take advantage of, how he's going to get his players on his team open so they'll have an open shot. Where he's going to be defensively so he can either possibly block a shot or steal the ball or make his opponent uncomfortable and getting off an awkward shot. So visualization, we can all use it. You don't have to be an athlete. If you're going to give like your first speech in front of a crowd, let's say 50 people, you can visualize your speech before you go up there. That you're going to be confident, that you're going to stand straight, that you're going to have your shoulders up, that you're going to look your eyes out into the audience, that the audience is going to be applauding you, that you're going to share knowledge and information that you have gained from whatever career or profession that you do. And that, everyone's going to benefit from your speech, including yourself.
Yeah.
And you learn by trying. If you don't try, this is another key point. If you don't try, you're never going to get better at anything. And people are afraid, kids today are afraid to fail. And failure, we don't emphasize in school that it's okay to fail.
Yes.
That the only way you're going to get better is by trying and failing. I think it was Kobe Bryant. I heard this from Steve Harvey it was Michael Jordan. And Michael Jordan is one of the best basketball players of all time too. He won so many championships with the Chicago Bulls. And he was always the player that they would go to for the key shot. Well, he shot, I think, over 1,246 shots to try to win a game. And out of those, he maybe made 146. People don't talk about all the misses he made. They talk about the ones that he made that had his team win.
Yes, that's so true. That is so true. I think that's another issue, this idea of failure and seeing failure as a good thing, as part of the learning process. This is probably something we could also talk about in much, much more depth the next time you join us. It's so important. And I must say our school system, like you said, is actually very much, I think, at fault that our kids are afraid of failing, because we are the ones who emphasize testing. We are the ones who put grades on and numbers on them. And then we say to them, hey, if you don't achieve this grade, you don't achieve this number, then you're bad. You're doing bad. You are bad. You're a failure. We put those labels on those kids. And then,
Well, we just recently, and it's going on right now, is, the court case about those parents, the scandal about making up things to get accepted into prestigious colleges at USC and some other colleges. Parents paid coaches to lie. Kids weren't even on these teams in college or high school, and they were lying to try to get their kid into these prestigious schools because of the pressure of trying to be better than the Joneses.
That's right. That's right. And it's like you're given this message again and again that if you don't get the right grades, you don't get the right kind of success as is defined, then you are a failure. Your life is ruined. You'll never be able to if you won't get a good job, then you won't make money, and then you'll never be happy because in this philosophy, all your happiness depends upon your ability to succeed in these ways of, first getting the good grades in school and college and getting the good job and then making lots of money. And it's all tied together. And so it's like failure at any level, at any stage. It's like the message is your life is ruined if you fail. And so no wonder people are so scared of failing.
Yeah, you're right on.
That's
Can I
really
share this? Do I have time to share this last thing?
sure.
I saw this in a classroom when I was subbing, and I think this is great. A lot of the schools, because of this, the COVID-19 are dealing with mental health issues, and they're trying to teach kids mindset. And I saw this one chart, and I thought it was pretty neat, and I wanted to share it with your listeners. So this is a growth mindset. So instead of whatever, try thinking, I'm not good at this. How about think about what am I missing? I give up. Instead of saying I give up, how about trying a different strategy? Instead of saying it's good enough, is this really my best work? What about this? I can't make this any better. Instead of saying I can always improve. A lot of times you hear kids say this is too hard. Instead of saying that, this may take some time. I made a mistake. We're talking about failure. Instead of saying mistakes help us learn. Failure helps us learn, people. And
Yes.
and and you were saying just, we're blaming the teachers, but I think parents should take some of this blame too.
Mhm.
Because a lot of times they try to protect their kids from failing.
Right.
So let me go on. There's only a couple more. I can't do this. Instead of saying, I'm going to train my brain to learn how to do this. I'm never going to be smart. Instead say, I will learn how to do this. If plan A doesn't work, there's always plan B. My friends can do it, and I will learn from them.
Awesome. I love this. Thank you so much for sharing that. Those specific ways of reframing these pesky thoughts that can come into our mind that I'm sure people will really, really benefit from that. I really appreciate your coming on today, Neil, and sharing so much excellent wisdom and advice with us. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. It's been a lot of fun. I hope we do it again. Are we going to do it again?
Oh, I am game if you are. I would love
I'm
to have
game.
you back. Yay. Awesome. All right. So thank you so much, everyone, for listening, and we will be back. And in the meantime, I wish you lots of peace and joy. Hey, thanks for tuning into this episode. Hope you're getting value out of it. For your information, this episode has been sponsored by the Happiness 101 program. Are you a change maker, coach, trainer, or healer? Are chains of fear holding you back from making the impact and income you desire? Using a unique combination of positive psychology and the spiritual wisdom of our most effective change makers, the Happiness 101 program helps you break through your limiting beliefs and manifest the abundance and success you desire with fun and ease. Interested? Book a free Happiness 101 exploration call with me, your happiness expert, Samia Bano. Just use my online calendar link in the show notes.